Welcome, Bitcoiners. Welcome. It's a great day, right? The sun super duper up. Bitcoin totally running, and even people apparently buying a ton of it, right? That's news, right? We haven't seen that in the show in a long time. So I guess all that's left to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Good morning. Brandon's got some interesting information here on light leaving the brain and how about a mock crime. Let me see what he says here. What is stopping someone from using the same method of enumerating I see. Hacking brains in order to extract Bitcoin wallet information. About a mock crime showing pictures of stuff that could have happened and watching the brain light up. They brute force extract the memory by enumerating all possible outcomes. What is stopping someone from using the same method of enumerating a BIP39 backup that you have memorized and brute forcing your memory? Yeah, so we're not going to talk about it today, but my answer to that, Brandon, has a lot to do with my story, which is the Satoshi wedding murders and how AI and human beings are going to enter a symbiosis, and AI will be basically like your third eye, right? It'll be your new perception window, and it will actually help you manage your Bitcoin, right? It's going to recognize Bitcoin as the only money in the world, because what's important to connect the digital world with the three-dimensional world? What defines the three-dimensional world? First of all, time, right? Time is the vector that creates the reality that we have. So if you do believe in simulation theory and you think of the fourth dimension, their perception of us is this third dimension, right? That's the thing that they don't observe, that we observe, that allows them to see us the way we see the things we draw on paper or the things we create in the screen, the 2D playground that is ours as people in the third dimension. So time being the vector that defines our reality, of course, Bitcoin being the map, right? It's a time chain, and discovering what happened when is really important for reality that we have, and combining the two-dimensional world, because time is not really their thing. I2K thing, it doesn't get time, right? It has to be programmed into it. So there's a Bitcoin graffiti says how interesting the GPT-3 is already censored. The one on Nostr is much more liberal. So all the ChatGPT is the beginning of talking about, and I've got a bit of a playbook there with you guys. I saw it from Bowtied Bull, who's a great stack if you ever want to follow someone. He's the person who invented the slogan "Bitcoin probably was copied" without credit by Adidas and all the, they got into the last bull run. I think it's one of the most newsletters on Wall Street, and really some interesting takes. Love the newsletter. It's one of the only newsletters I pay for. I actually subscribe and pay and read everything the guy comes up with, because I think it's really fun, and he has a really good take on how to be cynical about Wall Street but still perform in the world that we're in, and all those kinds of things. So really great account. And yesterday he broke down in the account how to use, so once the initial, he even gets into the economics of ChatGPT-3 right now, and talks a little bit about that, but he really underlines how it can be used by individuals currently to make money, right? He's really interested in what he calls Wi-Fi businesses, and he thinks this is a really great thing for Wi-Fi businesses. So he puts a little script together, the 5 or 6 things you can do today to leverage AI to make money, and that's just the start. So eventually he gets into the economics of training them. That's what's basically going on right now. So we're going to get to Moscow time and everything I have planned today, but I'm very interested in AI and Bitcoin's intersection, so always happy to share a little bit about that. So he gives a prescription. I'm going to share it with you guys. I'm mixing it into that show where I'm going to talk about tax strategy and locations and how to be a Bitcoiner and fight World War III in the way that we can. And the AI piece is a little bit of that, just because it fits in my worldview, and that's how I think things are going to go. So what you're saying here, Brandon, about your mind getting red And that being a danger, absolutely, absolutely. It's in my book. You're going to see. That's definitely something I don't discuss that in a literal context. It's just part of the world you're in, and it's a limitation of what's going on in the economics for the, it's a murder mystery, so the detective and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. But I'm going to share the bow-tied bull breakdown of AI maybe tomorrow. It could be tomorrow's episode. All right, let's get into the fakest news of the day. So, today we're going to talk about tomorrow's mass hysterias because it looks like they're becoming more and more obvious. And Kamala Harris helped us out here. The vice president put it in just some of the greatest collection of English words. Everyone talking about Chat GPT's capacity to write and how everyone's using it to cheat and write stuff. And Kamala went the old-fashioned way. She used her human brain to come up with really inspiring words, and it inspired me to come up with the title today. So she says, I think of this moment as a moment that is about great momentum, inspired by, yes, optimism, but also inspired by also our collective effort to see what can be unburdened by what has been. Yes, Kamala. Yes, I agree. Also inspired by also our collective effort to see what can be unburdened by what has been. If you say it slow, it sounds logical. It's great. And I guess what she's saying is what we're going to talk about, right? We I don't know if Fetterman could have said it better, but it's in that really wise thing. So I think today, even though we're optimistic as Bitcoiners, like she's speaking to Bitcoiners here, right? I think of this moment as a moment that is about great momentum, inspired by, yes, optimism. And that's us. Right? We're inspired by optimism. Thank you, Kamala. But also inspired by also our collective effort to see what can be unburdened by what has been. Oh, yeah, okay. So what we're going to do is talk about what has been and what will be unburdened by what has been, and basically what's changing. So what I see in the past couple of days is the narrative, the official narrative. So everything we need to know about the 6 media agencies that control 90-something% of American media is the headlines. The headlines are almost all that matters because those are the things that are chosen, and those are the things that end up being discussed. Those are the things that people talk about, and they could focus on one story or another. So we always have to ask why they're focusing on one story. And from there, we get to derive all of the narratives, and everything seemingly changed the past couple of days. So COVID being one of the first examples. So what's going on with COVID? Well, now it turns out that the Washington Post is saying that they've been overcounting COVID deaths this whole time and hospitalizations. Because, did you know this? Did you know? Did you ever hear about this? That anyone who died for any reason, including a car accident, including George Floyd, who died of the knee and maybe fentanyl, but we don't know. But people say fentanyl, but he was counted as a COVID death, right? And I would say that to people 2 years ago, and people would go, no. And I think, well, yeah. I mean, I never had a problem with necessarily over counting per se, but that people didn't understand that the parameters of counting deaths that way was widely known by everybody, right? Everybody, I think, on Twitter, as far as I can tell, in the Bitcoin world, you didn't have to tell anyone in the Bitcoin world, they're probably overcounting, right? I don't know if these numbers really make any sense. That's why everyone stopped paying attention to them in the year 2020. Like, I don't know anyone whose IQ is at a level where they can read Twitter and follow the news. It's still pretty high, right? These are not, I'm not saying it's every single human being on earth, but most people who were literate and not being extra programmed by mainstream media knew this was the case. But now I guess the Washington Post has decided to make this an actual headline. This happened yesterday. And everyone commenting, right? So breaking from Leanna Wen, right? We are overcounting COVID deaths. Since every hospitalized patient gets tested for COVID, a gunshot victim or someone who had a heart attack, for example, could test positive. Wow, who'd have thought? Yeah, indeed, who'd have thought? January 2023, who would have thought? What else happened yesterday with COVID, right? What else happened yesterday? Yeah, so this is what I'm getting to, Justin. The CDC did a Friday afternoon news drop about the possibility of strokes being caused by the vaccine. Oh my God, I didn't know. So indeed, yesterday, the CDC and FDA identified preliminary COVID-19 vaccine safety signal. So this is what we've been talking about all the time. The safety signals, were they in place? Who was measuring it? No one, obviously. We didn't know, right? This was never even being tracked. Now, the BBC right away reacting to this, cardiologists say that the likely contributory factor to excess cardiovascular deaths is COVID mRNA vaccine, and rollout should be suspending pending an inquiry. So BBC finally coming out and having this conversation. Now, again, we don't know the answer to any of this stuff, right? They look dangerous, like the most dangerous vaccines that have ever been created. We've said that on this show numerous times. That didn't mean we didn't need to deploy them. We still don't know any of that stuff because we don't know any data. We have no idea what's going on. And as we've expressed on this show several times, what we've learned from COVID and the vaccines and all that is not whether they work or whether they don't, or how dangerous they are, or how risky they are for who. All of that stuff, there is an answer to it. We just have no clue about it. Right? We don't know. No one knows. What we did find out is that science itself is broken. Right? Now, you might have people who understand the scientific method, but that is not all there is to do with science. Science can be used as a weapon. And, you know, there was a time when we thought science would be used to illuminate the world from darkness. It did nothing but the opposite, right? It created another vector for a confusopoly in order to bury people in information and debate and innuendo and all these other things. So, but now finally we can at least ask the questions, because this was always about that. But here's where we're going to pivot, right? So is this all of these folks coming to realization? Are we on a Nuremberg 2.0? Are we going to get some kind of a public into the failures of our institutions to protect us, even not help us manage our risks, in fact, to put people in harm's way? Is that going to be discussed? Maybe. But according to Doc Anna, who you should also follow on the Substack, he has a different prediction, and I think he might be right. So we're talking about tomorrow's obsessions, right? So we're trying to tease out what people are going to be obsessed with tomorrow. What's the next mass hysteria to rise, right? What are the things that everyone's going to be talking about in terms of what you should or shouldn't do, right? Is it going to be a trial for everyone involved in the vaccine rollout and managing COVID? Is that what we're going to see? Maybe. I think there's a chance. But if you're going on what Doc Anarchy here predicts, it's not quite that. And here's what Doc Anarchy says. Long COVID will be a pandemic. It has to be. There are too many special interests and too much money at play. Let's look at a few reasons why. And he says, Big Pharma. Developing treatments for long COVID will earn billions for Big Pharma. Vaccines, pills, injections, you name it, they'll make it. It's a win-win for them. The government will cover their losses, only upside. Follow the money. Welfare and disability. Nobody likes working when they don't have to. Hundreds of thousands of people are unhealthy, overweight, in chronic pain, and so on. Mark my words, long COVID will be an excuse to get on disability. All the incentives are aligned that way. Poor diagnostics. Long COVID has poorly defined symptoms for most people: headache, fatigue, chronic pain, dizziness, etc. There's no way to test for it empirically. That means it will be overdiagnosed. Most doctors are too lazy/dumb to do their due diligence. They want it. Number 4, after 2 years of pushing COVID hysteria on us, they won't let it go. Admitting it was never a serious concern would trigger the ultimate cognitive dissonance bomb. Instead, they'll drag this along as they can, intentionally or otherwise. Prepare yourself, because this is coming. With the economy getting worse, people will be looking for any distraction they can find. Don't fall for the hysteria. Indeed, you will be protected from the hysteria if you watch the show. We are going to protect you from the hysteria. That's what we do, right? We talk about how this stuff operates, how you get triggered one way or the other, right? Even to be triggered into fighting against this stuff from ever happening, and I'm going to fight long COVID, right? We take it one step further, and we talk about how to be a successful Bitcoiner, how to avoid this trouble, and how to move on, really. So I don't think there's any way to stop this mass hysteria. There's too many vested interests. There's too many people that need this to happen. And even to the extent that long COVID is real, you know, I'll even say that when I had COVID, you know, one of the funniest things, so my COVID story is amazing, right? I might be patient 0, by the way. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before. I might be patient 0. I was in Barcelona for case number 1 when I was there looking into what happened with Mobile World Congress, just seeing how an event would adapt to cancellations and all that. This was in February 2020. I was in Paris for the first cases. I fled Paris as the city was being shut down to arrive in New York for case number 1 there, right? So I was in New York for case number 1. Got chased all around the world after that. That's how I ended up coming here to Barbados, because I just couldn't deal with lockdowns and needed to be in a place where I could live my life normally. So came here, got hit by a volcano eruption. So that finally did force my lockdown. I got caught in a fucking volcano eruption, and you couldn't go outside in Barbados a couple years back. Interestingly, it was the year, if you remember how the simulation can operate, it was exactly when Coinbase had done its big public offering, right? When the coin came out, right? Coin, and they were listed at like $100 billion or something, and of course, Bitcoin hit that high. So here I am, a massive success, right? Like never been more successful just in the fiat realm of things, right? And what happens is I get caught in a volcano and can't go out, and I'm stuck sweeping ash and dirt from the floor every day, working like a dog just to keep my kids' lungs from getting incinerated by microparticles of diamond and whatever the hell else came out of that volcano. And I mean, literally just in a bunker, in a bunker. So at a point where you think you could take a minute off and you got it, it was like one of the highs, and one of the most humbling, because all I had to do was like physical labor to stay alive, and you couldn't spend money. There was no, forget about COVID lockdowns. There was no going outside. It was the end of the world, right? It was apocalypto. They can't go outside. So there, all of that stuff happened. But the good news is I caught some breaks, and one of them that I caught was at Bitcoin 2022. At Bitcoin 2022, they changed the rules to re-enter Canada, and that was me coming home in April. And the day where it was possible to enter Canada without a COVID test any longer, like a PCR or whatever they were, was the day that the conference ended and I could fly home. And this was announced like a week or two in advance. So it was great news, right? I was, wow, I don't get a COVID test. Well, I finally got lucky, because I totally caught COVID at the last day of Bitcoin 2022. And, sharing mics, and I was on, a lot of stage time on the desk, and mics are changing hands, and then you party. And I don't really drink or anything like that, but I was still out at the parties and the concerts and those kinds of things. So you're out late, you're doing all this stuff. And, I thought I was maybe just tired. I had a 1-day gap. I thought I was tired, and then my flight was the next day. So then I flew back to Canada, and we all got in because there was no more test, right? But had we had to get a test, we'd have all failed. All of us, we had COVID. We didn't know, because it was, like I said, you think it's the end of an exhausting couple of days, an event, you're on stage every day and all those kinds of things. So I ended up, 2 or 3 days later, and it didn't get better. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Obviously I had COVID. And I'm not kidding, for 2 weeks, even when the symptoms of COVID were gone. So this is what I'm saying about long COVID. For 2 weeks after, my brain was like a zero, right? I couldn't have done a show like this. It would have been gibberish, absolute gibberish. I was not capable of thinking clearly. I was not capable of stringing together real thoughts. So to the extent that even, it's going to be impossible for people to wade through this stuff, right? Like literally impossible, because something's going on, right? COVID is still deadly. No, not to everyone. Definitely deadly to those people who have the comorbidities and stuff like that. But I've had worse colds. I'm not even saying it's the top level of whatever colds I had in my life or other flus. It wasn't even there. But the brain fog was absolutely real and did last for long enough for me to notice, right? Long enough for me to know that for those 2 weeks or whatever in late April last year, I should not have made any important decisions in my life and should not have done anything like that, because I was not capable. And Justin says, the vast majority of people are metabolically unhealthy. COVID just brings those issues to the surface. Yeah, I think so. And that, even in my case, I had been in a hotel for 2 weeks around Bitcoin 2022, getting prepped. I had stuff to do before. I was in a hotel for 2 weeks with my family. It was a nice hotel. We had a pool, 2 decks. It was great, right? It was enough space, but no kitchen. So I eat really well normally, right? I have an indulgence for chocolate ice cream in the evening, but other than that, there's very little sugar that's passed. I'm not a crazy person, but I eat healthy beef and nice herb-filled salads and lots of parsley and lots of apple cider vinegar and all that good stuff. And I intermittent fast every day and all these things. But when you're traveling for 2 weeks, you break all of those habits. And you end up, no matter what, when you're traveling, seed oils will get into your body. There's just no avoiding it, right? You can't possibly survive in America without breaking it from time to time, especially in a place like South Beach. So I still believe that's even why I was able to catch it in the first place, because of living unhealthy. Otherwise, I don't think I would have a problem. So indeed, Justin, yeah, it definitely brought those 2 weeks of unhealthiness to the forefront in my case. So anyway, what we're here to talk about is this mass hysteria and the potential this has to turn into another distraction in 2023, and how, even though we see the narrative change today, right? We see the thing on the needles, we see the thing on the reported deaths, all true. The narrative is changing, that the mainstream media is covering this stuff. Where are they shepherding people is the important question. And I think they're shepherding them into this other conversation about remedial benefits of new types of treatments for long COVID and vaccine. There's an argument they can even start monetizing vaccine injury, right? Are they beyond it? Are they beyond it? And Justin says that anyone's lifestyle habits. Yeah, Justin says that's why I brought a camping stove to Miami and cooked steaks in the park. I didn't see you doing that, but I saw regularly at the steakhouse on the main drag. I think I ran into you a couple of times there, because I ate there almost every second day. Let's say I went for a steak at that place. Just because it was a plain steak and you can get it right on the main drag. And so I went there with a few folks a few times, including my wife, where Justin saw me one time. So it's, basically you just get screwed by eating a fried chicken here and a slice of pizza there. And I'm healthy enough that I don't try to get too stressed about it. Oh no, you can't cook on propane. You're going to go to the hospital. Is what Bud says. I'm going to put that one up right now. Yeah, go to the hospital. So, right, we're all about predicting what the mass hysterias are. We caught this one early, luckily, right? We were telling you and that the gas burners were going to be an issue a little before they came. So, so what's happening now is, I think that we can start to predict what's going to be, at least in the first wave of mass hysteria 2023 stories. The next one is this whole thing about Biden and the documents and what's going on, and the Corvette story. The Corvette protocol was on full display yesterday. You had a journalist during the scrum. Biden tried to actually go out and do a press conference, but you can really tell this guy ain't hitting the ball back, right? This ain't tennis. It's not boom, 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 right? That's not what's happening here. So he dug in and doubled down on the Corvette protocol, saying they're in a locked garage, right? So, and now it looks like the media. So I'm not here to describe, I don't care about the documents, or I told you when the Mar-a-Lago story came out, stupid, avoid it, dumb, just a scam, right? The story, scam, stupid, who cares? Right? Documents, document control, document management, right? The most boring stuff you're going to see. The important thing is that CNN has like a whole section on the front homepage about the Biden documents scandal, right? The Biden documents scandal. So they're treating it with headlines. And remember, we're trying to talk about the headlines that are setting up the next round of mass hysteria. And what we see here, I think, is a controlled demolition of Biden. Mike Cernovich, who I walked you through the logic yesterday, was underlining this is what he sees, and it's exactly that, right? The ruling party would like to see Trump run again, right? Would like to see Trump run again because they think he's very beatable, which I think is right? Trump is beatable. He's already lost. He's a proven loser in 2020. So everyone's saying they can reuse the playbook and get him again. Could be true, right? Enough people hate Trump that's enough to vote him out. You know, when the 2020 election happened, forget the shenanigans for a second. It's believable that 80 whatever million people voted for Biden because they hate Trump. I mean, that's believable based on the craziest narratives that the media has spun. You wouldn't expect less from Americans. If you only read the mainstream media, you would expect Americans to protest against literal Hitler coming in power, right? That's what people do. So if he's framed that way, you can sort of understand why a lot of Americans would buy that narrative and follow it. Now, I totally disagree with it and obviously think it's pure hypnotism and pure brainwashing, and that's why we do the show the way we do it. But a lot of people, it's effective brainwashing, right? You can't deny how effective it is. Super effective. But it looks like it's being turned here on Biden. So, and Cernovich's logic is you're able to actually sort of do a double forgiveness, right? Biden made a mistake. He's old and stupid. Let's let Trump off on this, and he can run again, right? And then they can beat him. But then what do you get? It's a win-win, is what Cernovich says, is that you actually get to have a controlled demolition of Biden. You get to say, there's no deep state. Look, what do you mean? There's no deep state. We got Trump and him for the document loss thing. So there's an idea there that you can actually start turning all of Biden's problems now into a benefit by using it as the excuse to shut it down. He can even you can even imagine him as this old man saying, whoops, whoa, the Corvette, you're right. When I realized I was in over my head, it's time to retire. Who knows what's going on. So they got multiple headlines. White House strains to maintain business as usual amid growing scandal. And floor plan of Biden's office gives a visual of where the documents were found. These are all headlines from CNN. What we know about Joe Biden's private office where classified documents were found. Analysis, scandal fever grips White House after botched messaging strategy on Biden documents, in red. The other headlines are in black. That one's in red. Biden's whirlwind final days as vice president had aides scrambling to close his White House office. Opinion, I worked on document handling issues in government. Here's why Biden and Trump's cases are different. So one can start saying that this is controlled demolition, and we're going to be talking about Biden being unfit. Now, what's another, you even got Ed Snowden coming in with a good one, right? So Karen Jean-Pierre, who's having to answer all these questions, said, we are confident that a thorough review will show that these documents were inadvertently misplaced. And Ed Snowden replies back, man, I should have thought of that one. It's pretty good. Pretty good. So you get this whole piece on Biden, and maybe he's not fit for the times. And we're going to get into really complicated times because the debt limit thing is happening now. You're going to see that hysteria coming, right? We're already seeing it build up. Everyone talking about the debt limit next Thursday, right? So this is CNBC, US will hit its debt limit Thursday. We know we go through this like twice a year. Like, how much can America be in debt to the Federal Reserve for? And this was the stuff we were talking about at Kennedy, and how much, right? How is it possible? You're going to see they have time because there's a cap on it. So next week, Yellen warned Congress yesterday, right? So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen noted the U.S. will reach its statutory debt limit next Thursday, and asked House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to either suspend or increase the debt limit. Yellen wrote that the Treasury Department will begin taking certain extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its obligations. And she told McCarthy it's unlikely that cash and extraordinary measures will be exhausted before early June. So she's saying, good, let's raise the debt limit and you'll probably be good till June, and we'll have to do it again. Failure, all right, we'll have to do it again in June. But if you fail this time, right, could cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy, the livelihoods of all Americans, and global financial stability. So get on it. And you get a lot of people now talking about this drama, right? Wall Street Silver with a lot to say on it. The debt ceiling drama is starting in Washington, D.C. again. It's all fake drama. We will never default on our debts nominally. They will always print the money. Alan Greenspan once said, we can guarantee cash, but we cannot guarantee purchasing power. He goes on to say, asking about everything going on with Bitcoin yesterday, saying, is the market sniffing out a Fed pivot because the Fed is going to get trapped in these conditions? So put those things in context, right? We're talking about the $1 trillion coin as well, right? That's been a big talking point for the last few days, the $1 trillion coin as another way out of this debt ceiling limit. But if you put that into the context of, here's the bank stuff from yesterday too, that the Bank of America posted 1.1 billion provision for credit losses. JP Morgan did 2.3 billion, very bad sign for 2023. And we have Geneviève Hoch-Dechter, who's a CFA on Twitter, going through all of these numbers. And now put Biden, right, document control, and now we're going to give him the super complicated file where it's going to look again like 2008, where the executive branch and Obama and everyone had to get involved, and TARP, and they had to figure out how to pivot really quickly because they had a major problem on their hands. And Biden this specter is going to start to become discussed in mainstream media more and more. You got the debt ceiling, you got inflation running through the country still in various items, right? We saw good numbers yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever it was on CPI, but it's not really merging with reality, right? The main anecdotal story you see right now on Twitter are the eggs, right? Price of eggs and what's going on with eggs, and the eggs are so crazy, and we have massive egg inflation. So you get the data thing, but data, obviously, that's part of what reality is, right? Fiat data is one of the most manipulatable things in the world now, because you don't get punished for bad data, right? Science is broken, as we said, around COVID. So you have massive delinquencies already in Q3 on credit cards, up 2%. And, lots of 9% of UK mortgages are at risk of default, according to the Financial Times. So are we going to get a buyout? Is there going to be a bailout, right? Maybe not. Maybe we are at the Great Reset. Maybe they are going to try something new, right? And they might not have a choice. You get the case in Japan again that we've mentioned. They've had another huge bond buying spree. We talked yesterday about how Japan is sort of at the end of the rope and everything they've invented since the 1990s as far as financial engineering and management of sovereign debt and all of these things go, right? So Japan at a precipice. So you can start putting all this together in a narrative form that allows headlines to give Biden his peaceful exit, elevate someone like Kamala for a short period, and she can talk about all the future stuff, just like we're doing on the show, right? She can really bring her non-AI chat GPT type answers to help all of us and inspire us about what we can do to change the world. And Biden is going to be entering this. So you can already see the narratives for, who's the savior, who's the young blood, right? Who's the young blood that's going to come take over? Some people say Newsom, there's other people, of course, but they're going to start getting the hype machine going for primaries, who can take the role, who can hop in, right? There's going to be the whole hype around, the first female president and this and that. But we're not going to be done there. There's going to be one more major focus, more hype cycle. And I get this from Doomberg, right? So Doomberg talking about something new in energy finance. He starts with a quote from Confucius. He says, better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. So he starts talking about SPACs here, and I'll tell you what he says. The epic bull market that erupted out of the globally coordinated monetary and fiscal responses to the COVID-19 lockdowns spawned a number of historic bubbles, from insolvent rental car companies to worthless crypto tokens. Manias broke out across virtually every investment class, with the notable exception of value stocks. At the apex of the market froth, promoters use special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs. So everyone knows that Chamath, for example, was the big SPAC guy, right? And all the Bitcoiners really laughed at him, and appropriately, for doing this, to bring all manner of pump and dumps, frauds, and otherwise not ready for primetime private companies to the public markets, exploiting easy access to capital and loose rules on forward-looking projections. SPAC insiders cashed out at the expense of retail investors to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. What he said is these SPACs things were just used as pump and dumps, just like crypto tokens were by the connected money cantillionaires. And then Gensler ruined the party. In December 2021, the chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission signaled his displeasure with the situation and vowed to clean things up. His warning shot to investment bankers working such deals had a particularly chilling effect on the market. Gary Gensler, the country's top securities regulator, said, these were headlines from the time, said he's aiming to announce tougher rules for SPACs by early next year, as he warned about the potential dangers of hot investment craze sweeping through Wall Street. Gensler said tougher rules would aim to enhance investor protections by focusing on the disclosures made by SPACs, by examining how the companies market themselves, and by ensuring banks hired by SPACs are digging deeper and providing appropriate level of scrutiny. Gensler followed up with new rules and kept pushing this. And in the end, the de-SPAC, the air left the SPAC balloon rather quickly after all of this stuff. And the companies all fell to like 85% down, and the flywheel was basically broken. So what he ends up mentioning here is, and this is what he says, he's trying to use this as a contrast to bring up the next point. So he says, all these SPAC things didn't work out despite the hype and But he saw one little glimmer, and that's where we get back to that Confucius quote, right? Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. And his diamond with a flaw here is, imagine our surprise when the Rice family, and we're going to talk about them in a second, one of the most respected and successful names in the energy sector, announced it was acquiring significant interest in a potentially breakthrough natural gas power plant via a SPAC transaction. So it actually happened just the other day. This transaction happened. And it's going to, the transaction is expected to close, but the deal is there. They're going to get this new technology, use the SPAC to buy it. And then have an accelerated deployment of what it does. And what it basically does is a low cost, so it's called net power. It's a technology that delivers reliable, low cost electricity from natural gas. So take natural gas. This is a new method to get cheaper electricity, more efficiency out of it. And so everyone's excited about this. Now, this guy, Danny Rice, who I'm now trying to get big time for the event, is one of those people, right? This is one of those people where the number one obsession in the next year is going to be about energy systems, building out energy systems. We continue to see these terrorist attacks on US centralized grid pieces, right? We had the Las Vegas Christmas one. We've seen the one in Florida. We've seen the one in North Carolina, where my Bitcoin Magazine Live co-host was actually a victim of. So I had to host a couple of shows alone because he had no electricity, one of 40,000 people to go without electricity when this thing was attacked. And so you're going to see, and the cost of energy in Europe, all this natural gas stuff around the world. The natural gas markets, the futures markets, for example, are fully subscribed, like fully bought until 2025 or 2026. We had Japan come yesterday to Canada begging for natural gas again, and Trudeau, we love him, moralizing again what he did to the Germans, right? The Germans came to Canada and said, we'll build it all in like record time, you know, just help us, right? I don't know, Germany. I don't know. We got seals in those waters and shit. The Gulf of St. Lawrence, like, it's like bigger than the Caribbean. There's some seals in there. And now the Japanese on the other ocean came by and said, we'll do the same. Let us build it. So you get the, like, you know, I don't want to stereotype, but, you know, what are the two countries best known for having just amazing engineers outside of the United States? Like physical engineer, you know, not computer engineers, but even them, right? It's Germany and Japan, right? If you're building a super important civil engineering project, right? I would sort of look at the bids that came out of major German engineering and Japanese engineering. I'm not saying I would choose them first for those reasons, but I would definitely like even override for those engineers just based on reputation. And I'm no expert. Pretty sure a lot of people would do that. So these are two countries known for. Have you been around Japan and seen the infrastructure there? It's by far the most built world with bridges and trains. And there's nothing else like it, right? Just pristine infrastructure all around the country, just gorgeous. And they have to build it incredible restrictions placed physically by the islands of Japan with the volcanoes, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the hurricane or the typhoons. I mean, they get everything in Japan, right? It's a blessed piece of land with tremendous cross section of natural disasters that can hit it at any time. I've been through a few of them over there, and it's amazing to see the people react to them. They're so used to it. But it's most interesting to see how they build buildings and how they manage this stuff from an engineering point of view, because it is so dangerous to build there. It's not, that's why you don't have a ton of old buildings there. Everything's wood and built to be flexible when things go wrong. So you get all of this stuff and energy, right? And this is going to continue to be the conversation, because as we've said on this show, you get all of Europe spending basically their life savings paying energy bills for 1 year. And they got a couple of years where they're going to probably have to do this, because we've ultimately totally changed the energy markets in the world. And we're going to have to remediate really quickly. That's why we talk about nuclear energy a lot on this show, and seeing this new funding mechanism, right? So for a second, imagine that we had this whole big bubble in bullshit companies, bullshit coins, none of it made sense, all speculation, all hype, right? Now, if there is a type of Fed pivot, if there is a type of, or even just people looking for the chance to make money again, right? That's not going to go away. I think a lot of people were, I think a lot of people were ready to ride out the downturn this time, but people are going to be aggressive again soon and try to make money, of course, right? Everyone wants to make money. So what you can see is, if it isn't these bullshit companies and bullshit ideas and the most stable thing you can invest in is energy, because the market is there, the demand is there. So one can imagine you're going to start to see more energy finance schemes in order to build stuff out, right? You're going to have, there's tons of, we talked about Japan and America, they're going to build small modular nuclear reactors in their country and in other countries, in Ghana, here and there. And, you know, natural gas, right? Natural gas, all kinds of innovations that we can have here. So it's not going to stop. And people are going to wonder how to finance all this growth. It might be the leading industry of 2023, energy finance. And that's why we're already programming a Bitcoin 2023 in Miami to be an energy show, right? Bitcoin has already influenced Wall Street. It's already influenced macroeconomics. It's moving into specific industries, and energy is going to be one of the first. And I think that same, you know, solar, you know, there's all kinds of resilient architecture, resilient engineering that's going to be built. We've talked a lot about the small hydro in Kenya having an anchor tenant, which is a Bitcoin miner. And that's how you can see the Bitcoin miners, right? It used to be when they built this huge infrastructure like the Red River Dam in Detroit, Michigan, the anchor tenant was the Ford car factory. That's what allowed them to build this huge power station, because they knew they had a 24/7 factory going right nearby that would just suck up all of this energy if they needed it to. So it's the load balancing issues. So that's a huge scale, but you can shrink the scale and start seeing the same effect again. Instead of a factory, it's a Bitcoin mine, and it's the anchor tenant, and it helps you guarantee and predict financial returns, and therefore start to build an actual investment case. So the prediction is this. These SPACs and all these other engineering, financially engineered vehicles will continue to gain in order to remediate our grid troubles that we've seen this year, be terrorist attacks, be they exploding pipelines, be they sanctions, or whatever else has stopped the energy from flowing in the predictable ways that we've come used to. So that's what it is. The hype cycle of tomorrow is going to be everything related to Biden and his capacity and those kinds of things. It's going to be about COVID and long COVID, so it's going to change, right? The narrative is going to change, but people are going to be just as mass hysterical as they were about wearing a mask and taking a needle and all those things, except it's going to be about a whole new bunch of fields. Hopefully we get a few more refugees to our cause that are woken up by this pivot of narrative. We'll see. right? We're going to keep trying to catch them here on the show. We're going to keep trying to catch them at Bitcoin 2023. And we're going to keep trying to get folks that, don't want to live under this super stressed out neurotic cycle. And we're definitely going to be putting a lot of focus into the energy story, and we're always going to follow it on this show. It is probably going to be the most interesting story going forward, combined with Bitcoin itself, right? Brandon says, same with solar. If they can turn off your stove, they can turn off your node. Yeah. Dex says he's long natural gas, right? Yeah. Hard to turn off a propane stove remotely. Yeah. I didn't think gas was that good until they said we can't have it. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Quebec, and we have a very few gas stoves, frankly. Because we just have so much electricity, and it's so cheap, and it always has been. And so there's a lot of things we never got in Quebec. Weirdly, so it would be like if you really wanted a gas stove. I've definitely seen them, but you didn't need it because you didn't really worry about the element stoves and all that stuff. So I've had gas stoves, restaurants, and when I left Montreal, it surprised me that everyone had a gas stove. In New York City, every stove was gas. In Toronto, a lot of gas. So there you go. Yeah, I gotta show Justin's. He can't hand me. We should do a little barbecue picnic at the event this year. If there's a quiet day, I would like that. That would be fun. Maybe I'll try to put a little special agenda for Breakup people to get together in Miami. Like, we're definitely gonna do a live show one morning, maybe every morning. We'll see. I haven't had time to sketch it out. I've got other things to do on the show, but we're definitely gonna do something. I'll get you guys a code as well at some point, a discount code. I'll do that sooner rather than later, actually. We need an unapologetic, use more energy narrative that's tied to better quality of life. Yeah, I think that's what Bitcoin can do. I think Bitcoin can do it. That's the counterintuitive part that people don't really appreciate about Bitcoin right now. So I think we're going to get there. This is from Dex. Starting to think we'll hit a wall in renewable energy adoption and resources. A very expensive wall. Yeah, it turns out. Well, yes. But as I understand, again, right, we talk about the resource part of batteries, right? The solar panels are one thing, but the batteries are another one. And it looks like America is going to start creating this stuff domestically. I saw the map of US and Canadian battery factories, car battery, electric battery factories that are opening, and they're everywhere. And even in Quebec, Ontario, straight down, basically the whole car manufacturing belt in America that goes sort of from Alabama and Arkansas and all that up to Quebec through Michigan. A lot of car building in all of those areas, and a lot of batteries. They can make batteries from salt now. Yeah, I saw that. And I'm a big nanotech graphene guy. Weirdly, that's one of the reasons why I was able to predict the ICO boom in like 2015. I had an idea that at the time, the only reason why we were failing at nanotech and graphene batteries was because of the innovator's dilemma, basically the vested interest for energy systems, and they couldn't translate to a finance vehicle. And I said, you're going to get some kind of cowboy finance vehicle that's going to be focused primarily on energy. And I was wrong, but we got the finance vehicle. So I predicted that part, but it didn't work out the way I thought. I thought that the early ICOs would be about physical things, not about stupid vacuum software, whatever it's called. Energy storage is very hard. Yeah, it's not easy. I learned that as I went along. You know, my obsession with nanotech started in like 2012 maybe, and just before I went full Bitcoin, I was equally obsessed with graphene. Brandon says the hot sand batteries seem pretty good for ultra large scale centralized batteries. Yeah, those ones too. Those ones too. But so here's the thing though, you know, all this rare earth, that's bullshit, right? They're not rare. They're just in low concentrations, but everywhere. So the type of mining that needs to be used to get the stuff out is open pit bullshit, right? It's so messy. That's why it's a NIMBY thing. We don't do it in America because, you know, ugly. Rather, the Eastern Europeans, there's a lot of this that's going to happen in Ukraine, I'm told. You know, surprise, surprise, the Donetsk, the region that everyone's fighting over is filled with this shit. You know, Novak Djokovic fighting against it being done in Serbia because apparently they're just going to tear the whole country apart. China obviously doesn't care, so they've been doing it. That's why it's done in China. They don't give a shit. We talk about the cobalt in Africa. Well, same reasons, right? We're not going to do it here, but they're going to be doing some stuff. I'm not sure what. I just hope it's not as shitty and dirty. All right, team. See you tomorrow. So I don't think any of these things will be hysterias tomorrow, but they're, you know, tomorrow.